Kip. It's really nice to see you, and thank you so much for taking time out and agreeing to be interviewed. It's really appreciated.
My pleasure, Lynn.
So my first question has been to other members of Virtlantis and participants is, how did you find Virtlantis? But of course I can't ask you that. So I suppose my question would have to be, how did you, well, maybe you did find Virtlantis, or how did you found Virtlantis?
Right, it's a great question. A bit of a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. Basically, about 6 or 7 years ago, my wife and I were working on a digital storytelling platform which also had the name Virtlantis. And the name itself comes from a kind of wordplay which involves 3 words: virtual, virtue, and Atlantis. And long story short, while working on that platform, we discovered Second Life, and I quickly became involved in Second Life in late 2006. And that's basically where the name comes from. And I guess there's a lot more to say about it, but I'll wait for your next question.
Okay, well actually that does cover my next question, because April wanted to know where the name Virtlantis comes from. She sort of had an idea, and I think she'll be interested in that. So, I mean, Virtlantis is set in Second Life as a virtual world. When you had the idea of it, and when you look back and think about what the idea was and look at what the reality is now, is everything as you planned, or have things changed with time?
Well, things have certainly changed with time, and I think in Second Life, it's especially in Second Life, but even in First Life, it's difficult to sort of maintain a plan. I think the philosophy that we had at the very beginning is basically the same as it is now. Already at the very beginning, we wanted to sort of embrace all cultures and all languages, and I think we've managed to do that. And that still is very much the case now. So overall, I would say that where we started is basically where we are now in terms of philosophy. And of course, a lot of things have developed along the way, and a lot of things have been learned. So it has definitely been a learning process for everybody involved, I think.
Yes, it's something with this series of videos I've been trying to show, because of course I've been carrying the videos out in English, and a lot of Second Life is set up in English, but Atlantis isn't just about English, is it?
Not at all. The focus is, I definitely would say there's a, a bigger purpose than just language learning going on here. The aim really is to try to bring people together, to get them to connect and to see their similarities, and also to celebrate their differences. And when I say people, I'm speaking, of course, people from all over the world who represent different cultures, different backgrounds, different ways of thinking. So that was a real drive, really, at the very beginning when we first created Virtlantis. The idea was to try to bring the world together a bit more, and that still is a primary focus.
That's great. So, I mean, Virtlantis is, of course, a virtual world. Second Life is a virtual world, whatever that means. But do you find that the real world crosses into Virtlantis, and vice versa? Does Virtlantis cross out into the real world?
Absolutely. That's been something that, especially in the last few years, has come about, I think, with the introduction of voice in Second Life and whatnot. I think people in general have started to merge Second Life and First Life. I've tried to set an example and to do that as much as possible in my own way. And I think that's something that really excites me about Virtlantis, is the potential carryover into people's First Life lives. I see Virtlantis as a kind of lifestyle. We really want to promote lifelong learning and the idea of free learning, and I think the interactions with people from all over the world here at Virtlantis really help to add value to people's first lives.
Okay, so, I mean, as you say, it's not just about even language learning, although that's predominantly the activities that take place here at the moment. I noticed that you offer these facilities to other educators and people with other sort of education needs in mind. Has there been any crossover into that area?
Yeah, regarding other subjects, that's a relatively new development. It just seemed like a natural thing to do because instruction of any language or facilitating the learning of any subject naturally requires the use of language. And so it seems to be a sort of a good next step to invite people who want to teach other subjects to Virtlantis to make use of the free resources. And we still have quite a bit of capacity, especially during certain times of the day. We would like to see activity on the islands increase. And so that's one reason that we are sort of opening the door to teachers of other subjects or to people who want to simply help others learn about other subject matters.
And what do you think are the main limits of using this kind of setup for a learning experience?
Well, I think there's certainly a learning curve for both the learner and also the facilitator of whatever learning we are speaking of, whether it be language learning or some other subject. Life does have its demands. So I think it's really a thing of passion. This platform requires the learner and also the facilitator to be passionate about what they do and to be persistent and to not simply give up on day one, but to see it as a process. But I personally see that as having great value because I see learning in general as a process. So I see every little bump along the way or every little difficulty that is confronted as part of the learning process. And so I don't see it as necessarily a bad thing to have, for example, technical difficulties from time to time, because even something like that gives rise to communication or gives a reason to communicate with others. So I see it as a good thing as well, that there is such a learning curve.
Also, somebody wanted to know, have you ever studied or learnt a language in Second Life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I often feel like I should be doing that more often. I purposefully do not attend the activities that are offered here at Virtlantis by other activity organizers, simply because I don't want I don't know, maybe it sounds odd, but I don't want my presence to in any way disturb, or I don't want to make activity organizers feel like they are being observed or anything like that. I want them to feel like they have the freedom to do whatever they want to do. So that's one reason why I personally have not participated in a lot of activities which take place at Virtlantis. But I have in the past learned a bit of Dutch in Second Life here at Virtlantis with a private tutor, I guess you could call him. And I would like to do more of this in the future. It's also a matter of time. I'm quite busy sort of helping out in the background and trying to make things easier for everybody involved here at Virtlantis.
Which nicely leads me to another question. This is from Eleanor. The technical constraints of running a place like this. I mean, we've realised that when I'm doing one of my sessions, I have some preparation to do it, but to actually have that place to run a session, there's a lot going on in the background. Is it very difficult, or does it run itself? Well, it can be a bit time consuming, but I think with time, or I know with time, it does get easier. You do confront things along the way which you haven't confronted before. As with any sort of technical problem, the same thing can happen on anyone's personal computer. Today you could feel like you know the computer well and you can do whatever you want, and tomorrow you could be confronted with some sort of problem that you have never seen before. So that as well is a kind of learning process. And I'm personally also interested in such technical things, so I try to enjoy that as much as possible and not become frustrated by any difficulties along the way. But there is a lot happening in the background, not only technical stuff, but also in terms of organizing everything and, for example, advertising the activities and maintaining the website and communicating with people who are simply interested in Virtlantis or have questions along the way. All of that does take quite a bit of time and effort. So that crosses over into, do you use other technology out there? I know you've got a very active presence on Facebook, and you just mentioned a website. Yes, certainly.
And even before I got involved in Second Life, I was out there on the web checking out whatever I could in terms of other virtual worlds and other social platforms. Anything that might be of use for e-learning is something that I sort of have my eye on or try to find out about. But yes, in terms of Virtlantis, we are currently making very active use of Facebook. Google Plus is something that we're also starting to explore a bit more. And Twitter is something that we make use of. And then we also advertise on numerous other social networks. But especially on Facebook at the moment, we have a very active exchange going on between language learners and language facilitators. And the conversations there tend to focus primarily on language learning, but of course also on the activities which take place at Virtlantis. The in-world notices or the group notices which we send out in Second Life are also sent or posted on Facebook. So we try to see that as a sort of outworld location for Virtlantis activities.
Okay, and do you think that you just mentioned, it is still predominantly language learning, so do you think it's possible to really learn a language in such a relaxed atmosphere? No timetable, no register, nobody pushing you to attend or to do anything outside. It's not a classroom environment, is it? Do you think it's possible to learn a language in this kind of atmosphere?
Yes, I would actually argue that it's not only possible, it's ideal. Of course, perhaps not for every learner. Some learners want to be pushed, some learners want a more traditional approach. But I think, generally speaking, it's more ideal to be in an informal environment which relaxes you, especially when it comes to language learning, when confidence is very often not as strong as it should be in the foreign language. And that's also very much part of the Virtlantis philosophy, is to try to get away from the traditional approach and to offer things in a very informal way. As far as learners taking advantage of that, obviously, and benefiting from that, obviously a learner who is more self-motivated and self-driven, or simply benefits from a support network, which is what I think we have here, that type of learner will benefit more than a learner who needs to be told what to do. So, yeah. In short, that's our approach to bring people together. It's social learning, I guess you could call it, and very informal and relaxed.
Which leads me nicely on to one of the final questions, which is the future. Where do you envisage Virtlantis going in the future, and are there any concrete plans for changes in the future?
Mm-hmm. There are certainly some plans and some dreams, and the goal is for sure to keep Virtlantis alive, to keep it going in some way or another, to maintain a presence here in Second Life, and to simultaneously start to venture out to OpenSim. We are currently developing an OpenSim location on the Kitely platform. That's kitely.com. And we're still in very early stages of development, so that's on the horizon, and the website should also receive some new updates in the near future. We are looking at possibly integrating TeamSpeak, which would allow people to speak outside of Second Life. The idea being that, for example, when on Facebook, you could potentially talk with others while posting and chatting on Facebook. So to add that audio component or that voice possibility. And then WizIQ is something we're also looking at possibly integrating on the website, which will allow live video conferencing and also presentation possibilities and so on. So these are things that we're currently looking into at the moment and are planning to eventually implement.
Okay, well that's really great. Thank you so much for sharing your time and for answering everybody's questions, and hopefully, we will see you around and about in Virtlantis.
My pleasure. Thank you, Lynn.